Welcome to our information session for the new intake of students for the AI Centre for Doctoral Training in Biomedical Innovation. So this afternoon, we're going to present some slides with some information for you. Pleased to be joined with a couple of colleagues here. So first is Lola, who is one of our CDT administrators. And the other is Eva, who is a first-year student in our second intake of students in the CDT. So thanks very much to them for joining us, and thanks for you being here. So I'm going to get started on this presentation. As I'm sure you're probably aware from advertising and from the website and things like this, we are one of the newest groups of CDTs that were funded by the UK government in 2024. For us, it's a follow-on, effectively. We already have a Centre for Doctoral Training in Biomedical AI, and this is an evolution of that programme. And as I go through this and explain what we're about, it'll be clear how this is different from that original one. The programme is funded for 5 intakes. So as I already mentioned, we have 2 intakes already. This is a call for the 3rd intake. We have money to fund a minimum of 60 studentships. We're already likely to go beyond that. Typically in a year, we fund between 12 and 14 studentships. It's a big investment. So in total, this CDT is in excess of 10 million. And the one previously was slightly smaller, but pretty much the same. So by the time these are both finished, we'll have trained well over 120 to 150 PhD students in this sort of domain. So a lot of experience and a lot of investment. And in case, for those of you that don't know, a Centre for Doctoral Training has the funding for the studentships. So that's for you as individuals and for your training and your fees. But it also provides additional resources to allow us to do all kinds of additional training. And the idea behind the cohort scheme is that you get to know each other as a group of PhD students as you go through your studies, and you benefit from having other cohorts in other years as well, who will often do joint activities with you and who you can rely on for sort of help and advice as you go along. And of course, Eva is one of those existing students. So what's new about this CDT really, I guess, is that we're really focused on wanting to bring AI into real world use in health and biomedicine. And the way that we are doing that is by trying to build a very large network of external partners who are engaged with the program, who co-design projects and supervise projects with us, and provide students with the opportunity to go and get experience of working with them throughout their program. And what this means is that the challenges, the projects that we offer are really trying to address needs of society and of industry and other sectors like the NHS and healthcare sector. And this is quite new for many of the CDTs in the UK, and it's new for us. But we already have a large number of partners, as you can see there, well over 30 partners already, and that will grow every year. So what's quite nice about this additional funding is that it means that we can run activities, so we can run specific events tailored in your training. We can bring in experts from elsewhere to help improve your training. You can do lots of activities like public engagement and communication. We can do career development work and lots of other kinds of activities. It's the whole program is really designed to really try and make students feel part of the process. So we're always open to suggestions from students about things they might want to do. And we have excellent sort of support from people like Lola to help with all the arrangements and making sure that we do everything as well as we can. And just move on. So this is just a subset of our current partners. These are partners actually in the new CDT. We have a whole bunch of other partners from the old CDT and other ones which aren't yet on this slide, but you can see just by looking that we've got both small enterprises, government agencies, NHS, other kind of academic industry partnership consortia, but also some big companies like GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, Roche, Janssen, NEC. So a lot of the major pharmaceutical companies are running projects inside the program. That is naturally one of the big industry sectors. But as I say, there's lots of smaller biotech companies and public sector companies as well involved, and several NHS trusts, including, we do a lot of work also with NHS Lothian and other NHS Scotland trusts. So it's pretty well connected, and those connections are growing all the time. And there's opportunity for students in the program to connect with completely new people. And we have a dedicated business development officer who can help make connections with new companies or explore opportunities that you might want to undertake. So for example, things like internships. Okay, and example projects from this year are just 4 listed here. If you go to our website, and there'll be a QR code later on in the presentation for you to check in case you haven't looked yet at the website. These are just 4 different kind of area type of projects that are currently on offer in the CDT. One on image AI, one on looking at monitoring of geospatial monitoring of disease with animals with potential human transmission. There's one for a multimodal integration for cancer, and another one on dementia progression. So there's a big range of different things. We try and span most of the modalities and most of the kinds of application areas that we encounter in this space. There are other projects that are related to more molecular things like protein sequence structure, understanding, and prediction and modeling. And we've got quite a track record now of running these projects. So if you want to know more about that, we have something like 25 projects currently advertised on the website. And you can see right away that this is not a CDT where you apply just to the program and then work out later what you're going to be doing. In this program, because we have these co-design projects with external partners, we advertise the projects and then you select a subset of those projects that you're interested in pursuing during your application. And I'll come on to that more a bit later on. Okay, so that's the kind of overview. And now I can tell you a little bit about what you would do if you were with us in the program. So this is a 4-year integrated PhD. And that means, so 1 year longer than a standard PhD. And the reason for that is across that period of time, you have time to do additional learning and training. So some of that can be formal courses. So you take courses that are typically level 11, so that means an MSc level course in the university, and some of them will be project or research placement based things that are specific to the CDT. And what you can see on this slide here in orange are the 3 compulsory credit-bearing courses that are part of the program, and you can see that one of them is 2 of them are in year 1, which are kind of fundamental topic-based things in the area to give you a broad understanding of some of the challenges and techniques that are being used in this space. And then one on AI ethics, which is very important, something we want to expose people to very early in the program. In year 2, you get to do some group research projects where you work with some of your colleagues in the program on a particular problem. And we propose different problems each year. At the moment, there's projects going on with a dataset called Generation Scotland, which is a 40,000 patient research consented cohort that have lots of different data modalities and linked data information. So the year group are currently, our second years are currently working on small projects in that space alongside their main PhD studies. The other thing that's really important to point out here is this 3-month research placement. You can do this flexibly in your program. And this is particularly important for people who are on a student visa, because this is a credit-bearing part of our course, of our program, sorry. It allows you to travel outside of the UK for that time. So if you were to visit an external partner in another country, that would be okay, because this is part of your FS program. So that's quite important. And that placement project could be in the partner who's part of your PhD, or it could be something completely different. So you could choose to experience something quite different in that 3-month placement. So for example, you might want to go and do a 3-month like policy internship somewhere in the government. You might want to go to a different research group somewhere else in the world and learn about how they do research, or maybe learn some new techniques and things like that. And then there is some space for you to pick your own courses on top. So to make up the remaining credits for the taught part of this program, you can choose from the full range of courses that are available. Most students in these programs tend to pick courses largely within the School of Informatics, but it may be that you want to boost your knowledge of clinical or biological topics. And so it's perfectly possible for you to take courses that are in other schools or other parts of the university, and many of our students do that. And I've kind of talked about these light blue things already. So these are extended skills and training. Some of the things I've mentioned already, but also things like presentation skills, writing skills, understanding about research culture and innovation. So we have funding in the program to support people who are interested in doing entrepreneurial work. And this is a really rich and diverse range of things that students get exposed to throughout their time with us. And depending on what your interests are, you might focus some activities around some of those areas in your time here. Okay, so down to the sort of the more detail about the actual studentships. So these are tax-free. So what that means is that obviously you don't pay any tax on it. So it's not like a salary. In fact, it's specifically not a salary. You get a stipend, and that stipend is set out by the funder. So in our case, this is the UKRI graduate stipend of just over 20,000, and it typically goes up with inflation. Sometimes, in fact, in recent years, has gone up considerably above inflation due to trying to make much more comfortable for people to do PhDs in the UK. Tuition fees are covered for both UK and international students. These are fully funded studentships. You get a small fund of £8,000 to help with travel and research. So typically students would use this for attending conferences or maybe training like summer schools and things like this through their time with us. Sometimes they might use it to get some equipment or something, but typically this is really for you to use for going to conferences and other travel activities and things. You get a computer and monitors and all this sort of stuff, but you also get access to high performance compute environment in Edinburgh. So we have a wide range of different GPU and CPU clusters, depending on what your jobs are, depending on what you're trying to do. And we are pretty much the UK leading high performance computing center. So we host a lot of tier 2 national facilities. So we have an enviable amount of different types of compute and have the ability to sort of make these available as needed to people during their projects. So both the university and the funder have over the recent years really put a lot of effort into trying to provide a lot of support around graduate studies. So there are allowances for sick pay and paternity leave, disability adjustments. You also have the potential, certainly if you're a UK student, to work part-time and do this part-time. If you have any queries about some of the technical aspects of how the studentships are arranged, I can answer probably most of them, but if not, you can email us and we're happy to follow up and answer any questions you have on that front. And perhaps Lola might know a couple of things that I don't on here as well. And feel free to ask at the end of the presentation as well. One thing that is really crucially important, especially obviously for overseas students, is that we are not allowed to support visa fees or the health surcharge. So that is unfortunately something that's literally not up to us. It's a UK government, UKVI issue. So unfortunately, we can't support that. For students who are coming on a visa, then you have to somehow cover the fees for the visa and for the health surcharge. And again, if there's questions about that, we can answer those later. But I wanted to make that clear up front because it's obviously it's a significant sum of money for you to find on if you're successful in your application. So yeah, we have lots of other support activities around. So we tend to try and do activities in groups. Sometimes that might be with a group that you are doing your PhD with your supervisors and their team. It might be with the CDT. And there's lots of university-wide support services and also support services within the program itself. So these are just a list of some of the things. So for example, the University Student Union is very large. It's a very large university, so we have they have really quite developed, very experienced teams of people working on student support. There is Edinburgh Global, which is specifically expert in the law and the regulations around visas and things like this. So they can give you advice. And lots of societies, and as I say, flexible funding to help support you, because everybody's conditions and requirements are slightly different. Just to give you an idea of what people go on to do. So this is some of those students from our first CDT in this area have already graduated and have moved on to other jobs. And just to give you a flavour of some of the destinations, we have people going to industry, healthcare sector, academia, research institutes, and so that could be major pharma companies like Novartis. It could be parts effectively the NHS structure like Genomics England here, and obviously various academic destinations as well, and some people going to startups. So we have an increasing number of students who are now disappearing at various places all over the world in different companies and things. So to my knowledge, at least, the destinations are very positive indeed for people who have been through the program. And as you can imagine, people who can use these kinds of methods in healthcare are in high demand. So we're looking for obviously strong students. It's a very competitive process. There's a few questions accumulating, which I'll come to in a second. What that means, obviously, we're looking for people with strong records, but it's not required that you are expert in absolutely everything. This is a multidisciplinary CDT. So we tend to look for people who are strong in at least one of the main sort of pillars. So it may be that you're stronger on the more biology side of things. It may be that you're more stronger on the technical, computing or mathematical side of things. And during your time with us, you can fill gaps, you can develop your understanding of the elements that are related to your PhD, of course, that you want to develop. So it's not the case that we expect you to be expert in everything. What we do look for is a commitment and a real interest in both the application, so the healthcare and the AI and related work, biomedical research, and an interest in the technical element. So the sweet spot is when we know that maybe you have great skills in some of the ML methods, perhaps, but you've shown that you really are interested in biomedicine. So maybe you've done some reading of some relevant papers, maybe you've had some ideas about things, maybe you've done some courses or some online study or watched some videos and thought about things, and you have opportunities during the application to sort of show us a bit about how you've done that and how you've developed those interests. We obviously have a wide range of different people from different backgrounds. So that means, in the program right now, we have clinicians, we have people from pure biology backgrounds, people from engineering and maths, and lots of other different disciplines. So it's a truly interdisciplinary environment, which is very good. And we get really great, often when the groups of students are working together, we get really great outcomes and good learning from each other, which is the whole point of the cohort. But that means you want to come in with a really open mindset, be willing to work with others well, to learn from others, and also to share your knowledge with others as well. So that's a little thread that we often look for in people applying, is this sort of openness to discuss new things and try new things. We increasingly, all of the UK funded programs are really keen to make sure that our students are good communicators, that they are excited and interested in talking to different people, and that includes the public. When you're using these kinds of approaches, especially with sensitive data, we need to maintain trust with the public, and one of the great ways to do that is to really take the time to try and explain what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, and to try and demystify what we're doing and try and make sure that they're confident that we are safe pairs of hands to work with these kinds of data. Okay, I think that's my sort of quick sort of fly through there. I might just take a couple of questions, and then Andrea, I'm very pleased, says joined us. So Andrea is our research strategy lead for the CDT, and she's going to be going through the application process with you in just a moment. There's just a couple of quick questions which I'll deal with first, so they don't build up too much. So just in the chat, a few questions about cap on international students. So just to briefly say that we would typically fund half. So it isn't a hard cap per se, but we typically would, if there were 12 in a year, we can fund about 6 of those as international places. So that's quite a lot. But we can't do, we can only do, because of the way the funding arrangements work, we can only do about 6 a year. So it's not a hard cap, but it tends to work out around about 6. Someone's asked here if it's possible to apply to do different CDTs, and the answer is yes. Doesn't affect the application at all. So basically, it doesn't matter to us who you're applying to ultimately. What I would suggest very strongly is if you are applying to different CDTs, please do make sure you follow the explanation and the guidance of both those CDTs, because they could be different, and make sure that you make your application specific to each of those CDTs, because it is very obvious if somebody put in a generic application across multiple CDTs because they're not really hitting the right things that we're asking for. So if you do that, there's nothing wrong with it and you wouldn't be penalized for it, but just make sure that your application is specific to the CDTs you're applying for, because otherwise you're likely to miss the sorts of things they want you to do. So a few people just asking about background in computer science, interested in exploring, in this particular question, linguistic cognitive neurological behavior in humans. So you're certainly eligible for the program. So the question is, are you eligible? You are eligible for the program, but what it depends on is whether any of the projects that are being offered this year actually hit that or are close to that area. So that's probably the key thing there, is that you're not applying, as I said at the start, just to a general program and then work out what you do later. You're applying to specific projects here. So if there are projects in an interesting space that's interesting to you, then yeah, you'd certainly be eligible to apply. So thanks to Lola, who's going through and answering some of these questions. So I think some of these are quite a lot to do with application itself. So I think maybe if it's okay to go to Andrea, and we'll go through the application section. I suspect some of these questions will be dealt with in that section, and if they're not, we can mop up some of the other ones at the end, if that's okay. Okay, thanks a lot, Andrea. Over to you.
Thanks, Ian. So my name is Andrea Weisse. I'm part of the CDT management, and I lead on the research strategy and impact. I will tell you now a little bit more about how to apply, which is probably the most pressing question for all of you right now. And we have a lot of information on the website about how to apply. How am I taking control? This is changing now? Yeah, okay. Right, so here's an overview of the different steps that you should be doing before basically starting with us. Now, it is only until point 6 that you would have to do things now. So point 7 and 8 are points that are only relevant to you if you are getting, well, waiting not, but the last point 8 is only if you are successful during the selection process, you will be asked to submit a full application. So in the next couple of slides, I will talk a little bit more about the steps 1 to 6, but I just want you to be assured that that step 8 is nothing to worry about at the moment, and we have separated this this step from the initial application process just to make this easier for you as applicants. Okay. Right. I think there were already some questions in the chat about the early process of preparing your application and approaching supervisors here. So I think the very first step is that you should really read with a lot of care the projects that we have listed on the website. You should also, if you have checked out the list of projects a while ago already, you might want to check again because we have recently added a few projects. So do make sure that you're up to date with all the projects that are listed on the website, and read them carefully, do some research online, about what these projects are really about, what kind of methodologies are involved, what kind of applications are involved, and whether this is of interest to you. And if this is of interest to you, well, then go and speak to the supervisors, email the supervisors. And there was a question about when to email them. The best thing to email the supervisors is to email them early. So this is a very busy time of year here at the university. Supervisors might not respond right away. If they don't respond, try to just email them again and remind them, because it's in their own interest that they engage with candidates as well before the application process, right? And this engagement with the supervisors is really important because it tells you a lot about the project that you would be working on, what kind of work you would be doing methodologically and application-wise, and whether this is interesting to you. But also it tells you something about the person that you would be working with very closely together over a range of 4 years. So I think for you, this step of approaching the supervisors is really crucial. And cast the net widely, approach any supervisor who looks, where the project looks interesting to you, and based on the information that you get from those meetings, then make your selection on your preferred projects. I'll talk about the preferred projects in a moment as well. So another reason to also engage with the supervisors is also that by understanding better about the project, about the focus of the group, of the research group that you would like to join, this of course will also help you to make a better case in your application about how you think your profile fits into this environment and into this project. Okay. Right. So now, once you have made up your mind about your top 3 projects, or up to 3 projects, you might not want to specify 3, but you have the chance to specify 3 projects that you would really like to work on. Then you should go ahead and fill in the supporting statement. So we've given you clear hints of how important those are. Also, in terms of the word counts that are the word limits that are applicable here. So you should make sure. So one thing that is really important in this application is that you are applying to the program. You are not applying to one project or the 3 projects. Overall, of course, there should be a good case that you are suitable for the top project that you're applying for, and you also have space to provide a case for the other 2 projects that you're applying for. But in the very first place, you are applying to the program and have to evidence in your supporting statement how your profile meets the requirements of the CDT cohort, how your background and motivation make you a very good candidate for this program. And right, I mentioned that you don't have to specify 3 projects. We've seen some applicants in the past who only specified 1 project, and that is fine for you to do, but you might want to consider if you really want to limit yourself so much in the application stage already. So I think there was also a question about whether project supervisors would be involved in the application process. So they are going to be involved to a certain extent. There's going to be a panel by the CDT. This panel may include supervisors as well. In the shortlisting process, we do make sure that candidates are being shortlisted on the basis of their suitability for the program and the excellence for the program, rather than a specific project. But of course, there needs to be also a match between candidates and projects, and this is why usually we try to make sure that the lead supervisor of any project is also present in the interviews of candidates that rank their project first. Right. Now, on the website, we also have one section where we detail what we're looking for. And this might be very helpful for you to read when you're putting your CV together. So overall, to write an effective CV, the advice is that you don't just list all your skills, but you also really explain what it means that you've done and what the outcome was, because that helps the panel better decide on how these skills and experiences match the program and cohort. We also acknowledge that there are candidates from many different backgrounds, from many different disciplines and career pathways. And this is why we try to be really open and inclusive about all forms and diverse forms of how you have come to your expertise and experience so far. So you don't have to think that you only list the formal ways of education in your CV, but also you can, on top of the formal education that of course should be included, you should also, if this is applicable to you, you should also include any sort of self-directed learning or online learning or other aspects that kind of substantiate your motivation for the program and your determination. Any sort of relevant work experience is, of course, important in your CV, and research experience in particular as well. So many of you will have probably very different experiences in terms of research projects so far. And it doesn't really matter how large or big your research projects have been so far. The important thing is that you detail how the experience of the research project or projects are relevant to you being a good candidate. Now, for the overall documentation of what you have achieved so far, it's also really helpful if you include any sorts of links to your code repositories, to your papers that you have published in the past, whether that's journal papers or conference papers, and please also include preprints, because preprints are also a very effective way of demonstrating the kind of research that you've done in the past, and list any sort of participation in conferences, in poster presentations, include those details, and we have in the CTT also a strong focus on public outreach and engagement. So if you can already evidence some experience in that, this is also very beneficial. One thing that I'd like to mention is that in some countries it might be common to include photos in a CV. This is not the case here in the UK, so please don't include photos, because we want to avoid any sort of bias that could come with including photos. Okay, so apart from the supporting statement and the CV, in the application form, you will also have to submit other documents, which are your degree, certificates, and the transcripts, and the translations of these to English. And for all those, for the certificates and transcripts, it is also important that you include those of your degrees that are still in progress. So usually you can request certificates that certify that you are currently taking this degree and your current achievements in that degree. So this is all to just evidence whatever you've mentioned in your CV. And we need all of these documents, please, in PDF. I guess as for any application that you will ever face in your life, please read the instructions very carefully. We have very detailed instructions on our website, and reading those carefully, reading what we're looking for and how to evidence this will save you a lot of time and effort and will really maximize the chances for you to be successful in this selection. Before you submit your application, really make sure that you double check all the that all the documents are included and that all the information that has been asked for is also included and addressed in your statements. Now there's a section on demographic questions, and this is a section that some people feel uncomfortable answering, and that is okay if you feel uncomfortable with that. There's no process for us to force you to answer these questions, but let me just assure you that these questions are or the answers to those questions will not be shared with the shortlisting panel, and the sole purpose of these questions is really for us to monitor and assess how equitable our application process are and how effective we are to include diverse candidate groups. Right. So this is the application stage after a successful selection stage. So this is not relevant for you right away at this stage before the deadline. But once you have been selected after an interview, you would be required to apply through the official university system, provide references, and also provide evidence of your language proficiency. And you would need certified translations of your documents, yes. Now, finally, I'd like to talk about the timeline that you can expect in the selection process. So you are all here. I think you've all checked out the website. You've seen that you've hopefully marked in your diary that 20th of January is the deadline to submit your applications. We will then run the shortlisting after the 20th of January. So this is a process where we come up with a list of candidates who will be interviewed, and interviews will take place in the last week of February, between the 23rd and 27th of February. Candidates who are shortlisted for interview will be notified of this with enough notice, with at least 1 week notice, I'm sure. And so please do keep an eye on your inbox during February. and then we would aim to make the offers on the studentships after the completion of the interviews. The expectable time for that is from early March, so 5th of March onwards. And there is a possibility that we might have additional interviews for home fees applicants in March, but that depends on the availability of studentships after interview. Right, and so here are the links again for the website, for the project, the list of projects. Please again check out whether you have really seen the latest list of all projects, because this has been updated recently. Please also feel free to contact us if you have anything that is unclear about the application process. Of course, feel free to ask questions now, and also feel free to follow us on LinkedIn.